The heavy gates of Winterfell groaned open as Ned Stark rode out with his sons, Robb and young Bran, beside him. The air was crisp, and the snow still clung to the edges of the paths, though spring was breaking through. It had been a hard decision, one that Catelyn argued against until her voice cracked, but Ned had made it. He would not leave his sons behind. If he was to serve King Robert in the south, his heirs would learn firsthand what power and politics looked like in the heart of the Seven Kingdoms. Robb, barely 17 but already tall and broad-shouldered, rode proudly beside his father. He tried to look older than he was, his red-brown hair tousled by the wind, his grey Stark eyes sharp with curiosity. Bran, small and restless at just 8, sat on a pony with a grin that didn't fade even through the long ride. He had begged to see the capital, and Ned had relented, thinking perhaps seeing the south might teach the boy a different kind of strength. When they reached King's Landing, the first thing that struck Robb was the heat the sun pressed down. Hard here, and the city stank of people, piss, and power. Bran, wide-eyed, looked up at the towering red keep like it was a castle from an old story. Ned had seen it before, but even he felt the old unease curling in his chest. The South had a way of corrupting, of twisting truths. He would need to keep his boys close. Their arrival caused a stir. The Lannisters observed with their usual chilly stares. Queen Cersei offered a curt nod, her golden hair perfect, her eyes hollow with calculation. Jaime smirked when he saw Robb, muttering something about wolf cubs under his breath. Tyrion, at least, seemed amused by the presence of young Bran, and offered him a small wooden puzzle shaped like a lion. Bran, too polite to refuse, smiled and took it. Ned noticed the tension immediately. King Robert welcomed him with drunken warmth, clapping his old friend's back and calling him brother more than once. But Ned knew better. Robert was king in name only. Cersei's grip was iron, and her father's reach longer than any shadow in the court. That night, Ned sat with his sons in their chambers, warning them not to trust too easily. In the south, he said quietly, every smile hides a sword. Robb took those words to heart. Over the following weeks, he kept 2 training yards, and avoided the court as much as he could. Seer Barristan Selmy praised his form, and even Seer Jaime admitted, albeit begrudgingly, that the North had strong fighters. Bran, however, was drawn to the stories, the books, the Maester's talks. He asked too many questions about dragons, about Ares, about Jon Arryn's death. It was Bran who overheard the wrong thing first. Hiding in the shadows of the tower, chasing a cat as Arya had once done, he caught a glimpse of Jaime and Cersei. In a moment, too intimate for siblings. He didn't fall this time, no broken bones, no coma, but he did see. And he ran, heart pounding, to tell his father. Ned's blood turned cold. Bran's words were clear, too clear to be the confused imagining of a child. And so the noose around Ned's neck began to tighten even earlier this time. Now he had not only Jon Arryn's secrets, but his own son's witness to the incest that damned the royal line. Robb, ever his father's son, begged Ned to act. We should tell the king, now, before they strike first. But Ned hesitated, as he always did. The truth must be handled carefully, Robb. Men have died for less, and here your enemies wear crowns. As the sun set over King's Landing, that evening the Stark family stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Bran asked, "Are we safe here, father?" Ned looked out at the golden towers, at the vultures circling the court in silken robes and jeweled smiles. "No, Bran, we never were." The next morning, Ned Stark sent a raven to Stannis Baratheon. It was a bold move, and a dangerous one, but he trusted no one else. Stannis was cold, rigid, and not loved, but he was honest, and that made him dangerous to the Lannisters. In the letter, Ned laid out what Bran had seen and what Jon Arryn had suspected. He sent it in secrecy, using a code only the Hand and the Master of Ships would understand. If Robert wouldn't act on truth, maybe Stannis would. Robb noticed the change in his father immediately, the weight in his voice, the sharpness in his eyes. Ned had always been a quiet man, but now he moved like he was preparing for battle. Robb trained harder, watched more, listened better. He was no longer just a son. He was his father's right hand. Bran, though, was restless. He had seen something dark and dangerous, and now he was stuck in the castle like a bird in a cage. Maester Pycelle had taken a sudden interest in the boy, asking him strange questions, offering him sweets that Bran didn't trust. Tyrion warned Ned in passing, when old men smile too much around young boys, it's never for your benefit. Then came the incident at the practice yard. Robb sparred with Joffrey, as arranged by the court for friendly camaraderie. But there was nothing friendly about Joffrey. The prince fought with cruelty, swinging wild and aiming low. Robb held his own, but when Joffrey sliced his arm deliberately after the bout had ended, the yard fell silent. Blood trickled down Robb's forearm, and Joffrey sneered, "Oops." Seer Barristan stepped forward, but Ned was already there. He grabbed Joffrey by the collar and pulled him back like a child caught stealing bread. The onlookers gasped. Cersei watched with that poisonous smile, and Jaime's hand moved to his sword. "You dare lay hands on the prince?" Jaime growled. "I dare protect my son," Ned replied, voice like ice. That night, Cersei demanded Ned be punished. Robert, half drunk and half scared, brushed it off. "Boys will be boys," he muttered. But everyone saw the rift forming, wide and deep. The court split silently, some toward the lion, some toward the wolf. Things worsened when Robb caught 2 gold cloaks snooping near their chambers. He chased them off, but not before they dropped a dagger. It was Valyrian steel, just like the one meant for Bran in another life. This time, it was Robb who was the target. Ned realized then they weren't waiting to strike. They already had. He moved his family into tighter quarters, guards posted at the door. Messages burned after reading. He began preparing for a return. To Winterfell, telling Robert he wanted to send his sons home. But Robert, drunk on wine and surrounded by flatterers, refused. "They're safer here than on the King's Road. Let them stay. Let them learn." Ned wanted to shout that learning was not worth dying for, but he bit his tongue. Still, the walls were closing in. Varys whispered to him of plots in motion. Littlefinger offered friendship and secrets with the same smirk that promised betrayal. Then came the feast. It was meant to celebrate a visiting lord, but it was a trap in everything but name. Ned was seated far from the king, isolated with Lannister men. Bran and Robb were placed next to Cersei, who smiled like a viper in velvet. Bran said little. Robb kept a hand near his dagger. During the feast, Cersei leaned close to Bran. "You're a clever boy, but clever boys die quickly in the south." She kissed his cheek, leaving him cold and trembling. When they returned to their chambers that night, Bran asked, "She knows, doesn't she?" "Yes," Ned said quietly, "and now she's waiting to see what we do next." Outside, the city didn't sleep. Whispers grew in the alleys. The wolves were surrounded, and the lions had begun to bare their teeth. The raven from Dragonstone arrived at dawn. Stannis Baratheon's reply was as cold and sharp as the cliffs he ruled from. His words were few but heavy. If the boys saw it, then the throne is forfeit. I will come, be ready. Ned read the message with a tight jaw. Stannis would not ride with ceremony. He would come for war. That made everything worse and better all at once. Worse because the storm was coming sooner than Ned had hoped. Better because he was no longer alone. Robb stood at the window when Ned told him, "Will Robert believe him?" "He won't have the chance to," Ned said. "By the time Stannis moves, the Lannisters will strike first. They always do." He wasn't wrong. 2 days later, the gold cloaks turned on his men. It started with a fire at the stables. Chaos broke out in the yard. In the confusion, Lannister guards dressed in city watch, colours moved on the Stark men posted near the Tower of the Hand. Robb was there. He fought with steel in both hands, cutting down to before being overrun. Bran, hidden in the shadows, watched it all with wide eyes. Helpless. Ned arrived, seconds too late, sword drawn. His men fought valiantly, but 5 lay dead before the bells rang. Robb had a gash across his cheek and a dislocated shoulder. Bran had to be dragged from the corner he was hiding in, too shaken to speak. King Robert exploded in rage when he was told, demanding to know who ordered the ambush. But Cersei was ready. They were trespassing near the royal armory, armed. The city watch acted within its rights. Ned didn't even look at her. He looked at Robert. "They nearly killed your future son-in-law." Robert paled but said nothing. His silence was the final betrayal. That night, Ned called Robb and Bran into his chambers. He laid out a map, his voice low and calm despite the storm in his chest. "We leave tonight. Quietly, we'll take a merchant ship from the Blackwater and sail north. I'll return later, with the north behind me, with truth." Robb was ready, already bandaging his arm. Bran, quieter now, nodded. He had changed. The playful boy was gone. What was left was quieter, older, sadder, but Littlefinger was always one step ahead. As they approached the river, cloaked and under the cover of fog, guards blocked their path. Not gold cloaks, red cloaks, Lannister men, dozens of them. "Lord Stark," the captain said, "you're under arrest for treason. Orders of the Queen Regent." Ned stepped forward, shielding his sons. "If you touch them, I will cut you down myself." Then came the sound of hooves. Irya. She had been gone for days, running wild through the city. Now she rode a stolen horse, face scratched, hair wild, a sword in her hand, and behind her men of the north, Jory Castle had rallied. The remnants. They hit the Lannisters like thunder in the dark. Robb fought with raw fury, his sword singing as he carved through the enemy. Ned grabbed Bran and pulled him behind a cart, shielding him as steel clashed and screams rang out. It was chaos, blood, fire, but the Starks made it to the docks. The ship waited, sails loose and ready. Robb carried Bran on his shoulder, ignoring the pain in his own. Arya ran ahead, eyes blazing with rage. Ned looked back once, at the city they were leaving behind. He had failed here, failed to protect Robert, failed to reveal the truth. But his sons were alive, and now the game had changed. They boarded the ship. As it drifted into the fog, the Red Keep faded behind them like a bad dream. Cersei had won this round, but the wolves were going home, and winter was coming. The journey to White Harbor was long and tense. The ship swayed through storms and wind, but it was the silence on board that that weighed heaviest. Ned stood at the bow most nights, eyes fixed northward as if willing Winterfell to appear on the horizon. He had left too much behind: friends, honor, justice. But the game had changed now, and his family came first. Robb nursed his wounds in silence. He barely spoke, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Arya paced the deck like a wolf in a cage, her eyes constantly scanning the sea, half expecting Lannister ships to appear. Bran, though safe, barely smiled anymore. Whatever innocence he'd carried to King's Landing had been left there buried. In blood and betrayal, when they reached White Harbor, Wyman Manderley received them with both warmth and alarm. "There are Lannister riders in the south," he whispered to Ned. "They speak of treason, of your sons attacking the crown." Ned's jaw tightened. Lies, but lies travel fast when they wear golden armor. Within a day, ravens flew from White Harbor to every northern lord. Ned knew war was coming. He didn't want it. He never did. But Cersei had forced his hand. They had tried to kill his sons. They had used his honor against him. And worst of all, they still sat the throne, smug and untouchable. At Winterfell, Catelyn met them at the gates. She broke into tears the moment she saw Bran, then slapped Robb across the cheek. "You could have died," she whispered. "Both of you. I begged him not to take you." Robb didn't flinch. He stood taller. "We saw the truth, Mother, and now we have to fight for it." Lewin and Seer Roderick were waiting too. News had already reached the north that the Queen accused Ned of plotting to usurp the throne with Stannis, but the truth travelled too especially through northern ravens. Ned had written everything he knew, everything Bran had seen and sent it far and wide. Then came word that King Robert was dead. Boar hunt, they said. A drunken accident, but Ned knew better. The timing was too perfect. The Lannisters had made their move. And now Joffrey Baratheon, illegitimate, cruel, and foolish, wore the crown. Robb called a council in the great hall. The bannermen, Camumber, Glover, Karstark, Mormont. They listened as Ned laid out what had happened. Some were shocked. Some were angry. All were ready. "We will not march to war for pride," Ned told them. "We will march to protect the North, to protect our children, and to ensure no false king rules while we remain silent." It was Mage Mormont who stood first. "The North remembers," she said, "and we will not kneel to bastards or lions." Robb looked at his father then. "Let me lead them." Ned hesitated. "You were too young." "I was old enough to bleed." "In King's Landing," Robb replied. "Now let me fight." That night, the Great John roared his approval. "King in the North," he bellowed, and slowly the hall echoed with the same chant. "King in the North, King in the North." But it was not Robb they named. It was Ned, the old wolf, the warden, the man they trusted. Ned accepted with solemnity. He did not smile, he did not boast. "If I am to be your king," he said, "then I do so with one purpose: to bring my family justice, and to break the lie that sits on the iron throne." He turned to Robb. "You will be my sword. And to Arya, you will be my shadow. And to Bran, you will be my eyes." The pack was whole, for now, but in the south, the lions sharpened their claws, and in the east, dragons stirred. In exile, the war had not yet begun, but the North was ready. The North moved like a storm. Word of Ned Stark's return and the naming of a northern king sent shockwaves through the realm. Lords who had once been quiet now chose sides. Some rallied to King Joffrey, fearing Lannister wrath. Others, especially Those who had seen Robert's court rot from within whispered Ned's name with respect, but no one could deny it. War was here. Ned led his army south, not with ambition, but with resolve. He did not wear a crown, nor sit high above his men. He rode among them, slept in tents, and spoke with his captains by firelight. Robb rode beside him, his sword always within reach. His injuries had healed, but the fire inside him had only grown hotter. Bran remained at Winterfell with Catelyn for safety, but his letters came often thoughtful, observant, far beyond his years. Arya, despite every protest, refused to stay behind. "I saw how they looked at Bran," she said. "I won't be a girl who hides." Ned eventually gave in. Arya trained with Syrio every morning and patrolled the camps every night. The men called her the wolf cub. She carried a dagger at her side and knew how to use it. By the time the northern host reached the neck, word came that Renly Baratheon had declared himself king in the south. Stannis, true to form, marched with fire and fury from Dragonstone, ignoring diplomacy. The realm was fracturing, and Joffrey's crown looked more fragile by the day. Tyrion Lannister, now acting hand, sent ravens to Ned. Pleas for peace, offers of truce, lies dressed in honey. Ned burned them all. In the Riverlands they found allies. House Tully had not forgotten how Catelyn's sisters had been used, how Tyrion had once been captured, and how the Lannisters responded with fire. Riverrun opened its gates, and Edmure Tully stood ready with his knights. The Blackfish offered hard truth. Cersei won't stop until every Stark lies buried in the snow. We either fight now or die slowly. Meanwhile, chaos reigned in King's Landing. Joffrey's cruelty grew. Executions, floggings. Sansa Stark, held as a hostage, wrote letters under watch, begging her family to yield. But Arya intercepted one such raven near Harrenhal and brought it to Ned. The letter was written in Sansa's hand, but not her words. "She's their prisoner," Arya said, her voice trembling. "They're forcing her to lie." Ned's fury broke then, not with shouts, with silence, cold and dangerous. "We take her back," he said, "no matter what." But war does not bend to will. The Battle of the Green Fork was the first blow. Tywin Lannister's army met Ned's scouts with fire and blood. The battle was brutal. Robb led the flank, cutting through the lines, but they lost hundreds. Great John Umber was wounded. Many northern soldiers saw their first taste of southern Steelland. It bit deep, but they won. Tywin's forces retreated, bloodied and shaken. Ned refused to celebrate. "These are not victories," he told Robb, "not while our children are in cages." Then came the raven from the Eyrie. Lysa, Arryn, ever paranoid, had shut her gates. But the letter was from her son, young Lord Robert. "Mother says they killed Lord John. She says the Lannisters poisoned him. I'm scared. Please help." Ned knew what that meant. More truth, more danger, and no more time. He sent Arya with a dozen scouts to slip into King's Landing and find Sansa. "You know the city better than any of us," he told her. "Bring her home." Arya nodded, not as a child, but as a Stark. "I'll come back with her, or not at all." As the sun dipped behind the Red Mountains, Ned stood over his maps again, the weight of his family and the realm pressing down like a mountain. They had marched far, one small, lost much, and ahead of them the lion waited in his golden cage. But wolves were coming. Arya entered King's Landing like a shadow. Dressed in rags, hair cropped short, She moved through the streets as just another beggar child. No one looked at her twice. That's how she survived. She made contact with Sirio Forel's old friend in Flea Bottomer, woman named Lara, who ran a tavern and whispered secrets into the right ears. Through her, Arya learned where Sansa was being kept. The Queen's Tower, heavily guarded, high above the city. No easy way in, but Arya was a Stark, and Starks didn't wait for permission to save their own, using the old tunnels beneath. The Red Keep, built by Maegor the Cruel and forgotten by Moschchi, slipped into the bowels of the palace. It took 2 nights of crawling through filth, evading rats and worse, but on the 3rd night, she reached Sansa's chamber. Sansa didn't believe it at first. Her face pale, her body thinner, bruises hidden beneath silks. When Arya reached for her, she flinched. "They told me you were dead," Sansa whispered. "They told me father abandoned us." Arya hugged her, fierce and wordless. "No one's forgotten you. We came back for you." It took another 2 days to smuggle her out disguised as a servant girl, slipping out at dawn with a cart of refuse. Arya killed 1 guard on the way. Quietly, efficiently. The old Arya would have cried. This one didn't. They met the northern outriders near the God's Eye, and rode hard back to camp. When Ned saw both his daughters ride into his tent, bloody tired and alive, he said nothing at first, just fell to his knees and wrapped them, both in his arms. For the first time in weeks, he let the tears come, but there was no time to rest. News broke. Renly Baratheon had been assassinated in his tent. Whispers of a shadow, of dark magic. Stannis denied nothing. The South reeled in shock, and more lords turned to Joffrey not out of love, but out of fear. Then came the ultimatum. Tywin Lannister sent a raven to Ned Stark. "Surrender. Bend the knee to King Joffrey, or we will burn the Riverlands to ash. Your daughters will be returned unharmed, your banners spared. Refuse, and we bring fire to Winterfell." Robb read the letter aloud in the war tent. Every word spat like venom. Ned took it, read it again, then dropped it into the fire. "There is no king but truth," he said, "and truth dies in their court." He gave the order. March on Harrenhal. The battle that followed was savage. Harrenhal burned under siege. Wildfire traps lit the sky. Lannister banners fell, rose again, and fell once more. Arya fought among the scouts. Sansa worked the tents, stitching wounds and whispering hope to dying men. Robb led a charge that broke Sir Gregor Clegane's flank and left the mountain wounded, screaming beneath rubble. In the end, Harrenhal belonged to the wolves, but the cost was high. Great John Umber fell. Sir Roderick took a spear to the belly, and Ned older now, heavier with grief than ever, stood at the heart of a ruined castle, knowing this was just one victory in a war that had no end. The North held Harrenhal. The Lannisters held the capital. The game was still being played, but the rules were different now, because the Starks were no longer scattered. They were bloodied. Wiser, united. In the snow outside the castle, Bran arrived on a cart, having insisted on joining them with Catelyn's blessing. He could no longer run, but he could see, he could listen. He brought tales of strange dreams of three-eyed ravens and trees that spoke in whispers. Robb laughed and hugged him. "You missed the worst of it." Bran smiled. "No, I just saw what's coming." Ned looked at his children, bruised, scarred, and strong. He had taken them to King's Landing for honor. Instead, he had given them war, but he had them still, and that was enough for now. The wolves had returned, and winter wasn't coming anymore. It was here.